Warning: this podcast may contain spoilers as well as coarse language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Our Anime Podcast. I'm 17 Writers, and with me is Shocking.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Today we just watched Princess Mononoke. It's been a favorite of mine for quite some time, but it's Shaw's first time watching it, so we'll start off, I guess, with her talking a little bit about her first impressions of this film. Right? Like an hour after watching it?
Yeah, it was pretty cool, because I feel kind of like an anime failure for having been, 300 anime deep and not having watched Princess Mononoke. Like, kind of an entry-level movie that I think a lot of people get hooked on when people show them Miyazaki films to try to get them into the medium. But I somehow, bypassed that. So it's always been this movie I've heard great things about and haven't gotten a chance to watch it. So we watched it for the first time. Well, I watched it for the first time today, and I was really blown away. I didn't think it would be quite this good, not out of any fault of the shows. I just didn't really, of the movie, I just didn't know what to expect. So when I went into this, I was immediately hooked. I noticed this one thing, because for once I took notes, which is more than I normally do when talking about something on a podcast, but I noticed that, right from the get-go, I think there was some really impressive, subtle characterization for our main character and his elk, whose names are Ashitaka and then Yaku.
Yep.
Yeah. So they did some, immediate characterization for them by showing Ashitaka as, he was looking out for the other people of the tribe, and they had this cool, bridge thing for Yaku, which I thought was kind of cool because it's just a really small thing and probably more of just something to help him out and running faster, but it told me that the MC cared about his elk. He could put thought behind that to try and make it easier for his elk, who he rode around everywhere. And I think that was just a small but subtle thing that they did to make you really know about the connection between those two. So in the beginning, when they show this demon boar thing coming towards the village and attacking them, he almost got Yaku, and I'm like, yo, no, not the elk thing. I already care about this elk thing. It's 5 minutes in, I'm like, no, not my elk.
Yaku is low-key the most moral character in the show, just putting that out there.
I was wondering how in trouble I would get for saying, Yaku, best girl. I wasn't sure how bad I did.
No. Yaku's fucking great, throughout the entire damn movie.
Because we see so many different, mascot characters in anime who, you root for because they're true bros and stuff, but he really stood out to me.
No, but this is 100% the bro wingman character. He chills with the MC's girlfriend. He, sets all of that up.
He was his wingman. She hated the shit out of him.
For sure.
Until Yaku helped him out while he was unconscious. What a bro. But yeah, so they did such a great job, right from the get-go of establishing, what the conflict of the story was. Which was really cool, because you felt like you didn't have to learn too much about his village. You didn't need to learn too much. They just said, he's protecting the village, he gets this curse, and now he's got to go try and find a cure for it. Great stuff.
Yeah, so that's actually, you're touching on, multiple things that I wanted to bounce off of at some point, so...
already cucking right from the get-go.
Idea cucking, right from the beginning, 100%. But yeah, that's one of the things that I thought was really cool... just on this rewatch, because I was paying a little bit more attention to the themes that go on throughout the movie, and I really like how they set up in the beginning kind of the entire theme that's going to be running through the entire thing. Ashitaka's single act of violence against the boar is how he gets this curse on his arm, and then of course throughout the film they build this up in kind of bigger ways of how people kind of approaching problems in a violent or non-violent way leads to these kind of different outcomes, which I think is one of the major points of the film. And so Ashitaka's beginning fight with the boar is a microcosm that is almost explaining what's going on with both Lady Eboshi and San later in the show, where they're both trying to protect their own but using violence to do so and end up more hurt because of it.
It's kind of cool, too, because I think a lot of times the main character role is often someone who learns throughout their journey and they learn through their experiences. But I had a feeling that, Ashitaka is, the most wise character in the story. Right from the get-go, they said, I think one of the village chiefs, or maybe it was, the oracle said, did you know what you were bringing on to yourself? And he said, yeah, as soon as I shot the arrow, I knew that what kind of fate I was accepting. Like, he already knew that, like, killing the boar would have major consequences for himself as well. And you never seem to think of him being like, he's never like, why did I get cursed? Like, he seems to be pretty fully aware that he got cursed because he attacked the boar.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up that I thought was really awesome, because one of the criticisms that you'll see of Princess Mononoke is that Ashitaka isn't that deep of a character, which
Weak criticism.
Yeah, I think it's a weak criticism, and I think it misses the point of what Ashitaka's supposed to be, because yeah, Ashitaka has already kind of completed his own, like, emotional moral arc, like, he knows himself at the start of the show.
Yeah.
Which I think is the entire point, that you're viewing the rest of the world through the lens of someone who is kind of knows their place. And so you get to see from this, like, incredibly moral character, a perspective on the situation, and because this character that's been set up as this wise character, this moral character, can't really decide or see a right answer. I think that's part of what the major impact of the movie is supposed to be.
I'd agree with that too. And I think it's interesting that, I feel like that's like, I would completely disagree with that criticism for anyone who had that. Because what's interesting is how much of a player for the sake of humanity and balance he becomes later on. Because as we know, like, I guess this is kind of like jumping ahead, but, you know, later on in the movie, after he gets healed by the deer god, like, his wound gets healed, but he still has that scar and curse on him. So that was essentially the goal he was trying to accomplish, and after essentially not completing his goal, he could have just given up and gone back home or something, or just, you know, chilled with someone else and not really fought the battle. But he chose to try and fight and save both San and Lady Iaiboshi?
Aboshi.
Aboshi, yeah. Lady Aboshi. Like, he was both trying to save humanity and the forest, which he didn't really have to do. Like,
yeah.
If he was just set out on that goal. So I think that shows a lot more wisdom and grace. And it's interesting, because normally he would be the kind of, like, you know, character who's learning from everyone else, but in this one he's trying to set balance for everyone.
Yeah, and I do think that's really cool, of kind of this process of him coming to care about everything in the movie as the viewer does, because it does kind of place the viewer in a similar situation to Ashitaka, where you kind of want him to succeed at all of his objectives, because it's a movie with it's a movie with, like, all of this conflict and all of this horrible stuff going on, but with really only one bad guy, and for the most part you just kind of feel bad for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And the bad guy is fun. So there's no one in the movie that I disliked.
Well, I don't even know if there's a bad guy.
Oh, I feel like the monk and then the emperor kind of by extension are the villains too.
Yeah, they're the ones who are the most, like, they're the most closest to being a bad guy,
yeah.
I'd say. Because I get the impression that they're trying to trick people. They're the ones who are, like, trying to trick people and use things for their own advantage. Like, they don't have any real moral high ground to stand on with their actions.
Yeah, but at the same time, Lady Eboshi is the person who falls, like, most frequently into the antagonist role, and she's someone who would 100% be the protagonist of her own story if it were framed in a different way, which I feel like is really cool.
Yeah, and she said, she said when she ran into Ashitaka that the boar should have put the curse on her, since she's the one who caused the curse to happen.
Yeah.
And you can tell with her that she's the kind of character who's not just saying, like, oh, it should have been me. Like, she would have been 100% down with being cursed if it meant achieving her goals and protecting the people.
Right. And she's one of those people who, yeah, she's power hungry, but she also kind of deserves it, because she's she is this character who is intensely moral, intensely righteous, and trying to help people. And her one real failing is that she can't see any way to deal with the forest other than violence, which I think is it's just really nicely framed, because it shows because it's a kind of environmentalist, like, pacifist movie that doesn't say you can't harm the environment and you can't be violent. It has this immense sympathy towards those actions, but it also is kind of trying to make the point that they're wrong, which I think is yeah.
It was really interesting, too, when you think about it. Well, because I knew that this story would have, like, some kind of environmental theme with it. And I think it's interesting when you think about the cursed boar as kind of a symbolism for... It's kind of a symbol for pollution, and how even though Ashitaka had no real, like, role in the conflict between like Iboshi and the forest, he's still getting hurt by it, which is like how pollution works. The people who cause pollution aren't necessarily the ones who deal with the direct consequences from it. Everyone is getting hurt, even if they're not within the area.
Right. And so that's why I think this film is so cool, because it kind of parallels two philosophical ideas, one that's about pollution in nature and the other's about the propagation of violence, essentially.
Yeah.
And they both really mesh together in this movie, and it treats it in a way that I feel like I mentioned this a little bit before, but I feel like it avoids a lot of the pitfalls of these environmental message films, where a lot of the time they portray treating the environment well as this easy right answer in a lot of those movies.
Yeah, because, those movies try to blame someone. They always try to blame, the humans are the super duper bad guys because they're polluting everything and they gotta stop. And once they stop, then everything will be fixed. But they do show that, even in the, micro society of the forest, you still have those problems between the wolves and the boars and the monkeys and stuff, they still have their own problems with or without the humans. And I liked how at the beginning of the movie you see that Ashitaka's village has that problem of, we don't have enough young people in the village, and that they're all too busy bearing the burden of the old and trying to put the team on their back, which is a not so subtle nod at Japan's declining birth rate.
Right.
And then later in the movie, you have the boars saying, our people are dying, we have less and less boars, we keep getting dumber and dumber, all the different aspects of society are really kind of failing, except really Ibayoshi's village. That's the only one where it seems like there's some form of,
Yeah, Lady Iboshi's village is this hope for the future, whereas everything else is kind of falling apart. And so... It's hard to say what to root for, because in a certain sense, maybe it's right that the boars have to die. But it's I love this film so much because it makes an environmental point without actually shoving an answer down your throat. It's more, I feel like the message of the film at its core is kindness and not actually about saying that there's a right path to fixing things, because it's kind of making a strong point that there isn't.
Yeah, because there was no real right answer that they could think of other than stop killing each other. That was the only thing that you can do,
yeah,
really.
And even then, there were situations in that movie when they couldn't really stop killing each other, when that violence was almost impossible for them to avoid. The other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this is every time, because I noticed it, after I finished the film and was just kind of thinking back, was that kind of leaning into that, Ashitaka kills a decent number of people in that movie, right?
Yeah.
But just about every time it comes back to bite him, I was thinking about it. So he kills the boar, which is obvious, right? He gets cursed. As he's riding through, he tries to save some random people who are being attacked by samurai, kills some of them, but in doing so actually ends up saving the life of this monk who turns out to be kind of the worst human being in the movie.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's so true.
And then
if he just died, then that wouldn't have...
Yeah. And then, another time, he ends up fighting some people in that he's running from, and in that combat, Yaku ends up injured. I'm not sure if that's if that's the case for, everything that happens in the movie. I just think that that's a really interesting little touch that they've added that kind of fits with the overall theme.
Yeah, that's really true. And it was interesting how they showed that, I think, the curse was, helping to perpetuate him killing people.
Yeah.
You saw that, he would just aim at them and try and, get them to stop shooting at him. But because of the curse, he would take dudes' arms off, he would take their heads off, he would get, this immense strength at just killing them.
Yeah, and that was one of the things where, this is another criticism that I've heard, and I actually sympathized with until this watch-through, was that kind of cartoony nature of Ashitaka's violence sort of undercut the pacifist themes of the movie. But I actually think it's kind of the opposite now.
I thought it was very jarring.
Yeah, it is very jarring, but I think looking back now, it's a little bit more intentional. That violence is meant to be spreading out of him, whether or not he wants to. That he's been kind of tainted by it.
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference between some of the I'd say the violence in the rest of the movie, which is supposed to be kind of, it's a lot less jarring and it's a lot less extreme, and the kind of over-the-top action of him, him shooting someone and it cleaning their arms off in a really gruesome way. Because I think that really only happened with him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember that happening with anyone else where their attempts at stabbing people really felt over the top in nature. And I think they did that with purpose, because at the beginning of the movie, when he was shooting at the boar and stuff, it didn't feel like an over the top type of over the top fight. You didn't get that feeling that he had supernatural human power to him like you did later after he was cursed.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really interesting. Oh man. Going back through, there's a whole lot that I found to be really fascinating, because I didn't notice on my first watch through just how, I guess, gruesome some of the, not just Ashitaka stuff was, but some of the other violence was conceptually. Like, it didn't show much other than the gore from Ashitaka's violence. But when he's just riding by that battle scene in the background, you see, like, people, like, dismembering the helpless, essentially.
Yeah.
And also the fight for the hill with the boars was with just like
where they
dropping bombs on their own soldiers and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that film is it's really interesting, because it does feel like a little bit of a tonal clash, especially with Ashitaka's just kind of like murdering a bunch of people just very quickly. But I do think that that there's kind of this intentional core of it's meant to feel wrong and out of place in the film, and to kind of shock you.
I would say so. I mean, I don't think it's glorifying violence, if not just showing just how gruesome it is, because it is a tone jarring feeling when you're watching him ride through and, just do like, I don't know, just cleaning dude's arms straight off. It looked really extreme.
Yeah.
And it was very uncomfortable. It wasn't like, this is a really cool thing that happened. It was like, whoa, you've gone too far, fam.
Yeah. The side thing, when he's separating Lady Eboshi and San, and he says basically that to both of them that they have a demon inside of them, I really liked that.
Because that's a great line.
I think that particular line really highlights how he views what's in himself. This demon is eating up his arm and is going to kill him, but this intent towards violence, he views it in the outside world as essentially the same thing. It's going to eat them up and kill them in the same way it will him, just less explicitly and like a disease.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that Lady Eboshi is like one of your favorite characters. Did you have I'm sure you had a lot to say about her. I had a lot too, but I wanted to hear what you thought, because you've always spoken about her so much. So now I finally got to see.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear.
So I guess there's not a ton to it. I always like the kind of characters like that kind of fill the power hungry role, but also kind of have a point. And in particular, I really liked both sides that you get to see of Lady Eboshi, where she's very kind of cold and calculating and willing to sacrifice, but she also has that caring aspect to her. And getting to see kind of I guess the first time you show up in Irontown, and like at the very beginning of the movie, when you get to see her kind of fighting the wolves, and she seems like this heartless person, and then you show up he shows up in Irontown with this person of hers that she's rescued, and she's all of a sudden it seems like the kind of image of kindness and hospitality, and getting to kind of go back and forth and reconcile those two images of the same woman, I thought was a really good it was a really well done experience throughout the movie. So I feel like how her character was presented was really good. And I also just like what she represents in the film. She represents this force of the best of humanity that is destroying nature. And so you're seeing a character who I would say is written as a very virtuous human being, almost to the same degree that Ashitaka is, but at the same time she is bringing kind of this objective harm to the world. And I think that was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was interesting too, because I noticed that the first thing I think we notice after she tries to take down the wolves is how she seems to have no compassion for her soldiers. They said how they lost some of them, and then they fell into the river, and she's just we got to keep moving. And at first I was wondering, because then later we see that she also is buying women from brothels and giving them a place to work and live their own lives without being imprisoned, and then she's having the lepers who wouldn't have a place to go, but she's giving them a place to live. So she's kind of helping all the weak. And I was wondering if it was going to be one of those situations where she doesn't really care about the men or the stronger people in her society, but cares about the women and weak more so. Like, if she was placing all of her focus on that. Until later in the movie where Ashitaka comes and warns her that, like, everyone is under attack in the town, and she's like, I've given the women in town everything they need to do to be able to survive on their own. Like, I need to continue to do this, which I thought was pretty cool, because it's not that she views the women or the sick as weaker. She views them as part of her society, but she knows that everyone in their society needs to do what they can to survive, but she can't stay back for them. Which was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and so that's what I think makes her such a, like, compelling, interesting character, because you do see so often in the kind of archetype, like, leader archetype that she's filling in media, of people who are so of people who have that same kind of compassion and are so engaged in this idea of saving everyone. But really, her cold and calculatingness is not her being cold. It's a matter of respect for all of her people, I think, which is part of why I really like her. I think she is, in a certain sense, I think a lot of these characters are kind of meant to be idealized archetypes, where you have Ashitaka, who's meant to be kind of the wisest man taking the middle path, and you have San, who's this personification of humanity's relationship with the forest, and then you have Lady Eboshi, who to me is the personification of what a leader of men should look like. And I think she was written as that.
And you can tell that she's also like the symbolism of, like, human progress in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is changing, and you can't stay back and, like, hold yourself back, because, like, evolution is part of human nature. Like, we're constantly changing and evolving, both in society, with technology, everything. Like, she can't stay back, just like humanity can't hold itself back, even if it is causing huge harm to everyone.
Yeah,
you know?
which I think is really neatly mirrored in the social progress that you see in her society, right? Because you have this more egalitarian deal between men and women. And so her progress isn't entirely just this progress of this inevitable march of humanity destroying nature. It's also the progress of human culture kind of evolving and becoming something better. So seeing that juxtaposed against, of course, with all of the harm that ends up causing, I think is just really cool, because that's not a perspective that you often get to see in movies like this. It's very nuanced.
Yeah, exactly. It was really cool to see that the only person I really rooted for was Ashitaka, and that was because he was trying to help everyone.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah, and because everyone had a point, with the exception of, I keep forgetting his name. What's the monk's?
Did he even have a name? I just called him,
he
like,
did have a name, but yeah.
It was like.
Oh well.
Yeah, I forget his name, because he didn't. I don't know if he introduced himself. I remember all the people. I remember, like, all the wolves, the wolf bros, like.
Yeah, they referred to him by name.
Jigo or something? Jigo?
Yeah, Jigo.
Jigo, yeah.
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 So kind of with the exception of him, because he's the one character who really had, like, himself as a motive and not really much else. Versus like just about everyone else in the film, which I think made it a lot more engaging and compelling, was in some way fighting for other people or some higher ideal, and you could really believe in what they were fighting for, even when they were killing each other. So yeah, it made it a very kind of, like, heart-wrenching experience to watch kind of the inevitable happen as these groups continue to butt heads.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I was thinking, I guess if I have, like, any real criticism for any of the characters, I like San a lot, but I don't really think she's as deep as some of the other characters. Like, I think on a base level, we can understand that, like, she's, you know, as you said, humanity's relationship to nature, and, like, she's looking out for the wolves who raised her, and she can't stand humanity, and all of that because she lived with nature. But I didn't get that same type of, like, internal conflict feeling I got with Ibayoshi and Ashitaka, who seem to really have, like, multiple facets to them on, like, the different conflicts around them. So I think if any of there's criticism towards Ashitaka for not being as deep or complex, I would probably say that San fits that a lot more than he does.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually, now that I think about it. Like, I don't think San was a bad character or did a bad job of filling her role, but you're right that in terms of, like, the other main characters in the core cast, you could write an entire essay about their motivations versus San, who is a lot more basic, and I don't think that that's bad that she is, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree that it's not a bad thing, but it's also, like, I don't think she's a bad character, but I just don't think she's as interesting or as compelling as the other ones. But that isn't necessarily bad, because I think that's what the movie needs.
Yeah. Yeah, because the movie did again, she hasn't interacted much with human society. She is, she's not really thinking about things from the same perspective as everyone else, and so you don't necessarily need her for as a lens as much as you do everyone else, so much as you need Ashitaka's connection to her.
Yeah,
because,
and I think there's go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, like, this is inherently kind of a film meant to push, kind of introduce the viewer to these concepts and, like, why why this is such a difficult choice for Ashitaka. And so, and so San's perspective is going to be inherently a little bit alien, and so it's okay for her to be basic because it's not about her perspective as much as it is Ashitaka's perspective on her.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that. I do think there is an obvious connection between San and Nazca from Nazca in the Valley of the Wind,
which I still have yet to see. But
yeah, I think you'll really like it. The two movies are kind of similar, but they're pretty similar, but a bit different in, like, how they present things. But Nazca is very similar to San, but I think the difference is she really embodies that connection of, you know, living amongst humanity and living in a society, and her connection with nature. Whereas San is a lot more of, like, she just cares about nature and rejects humanity as a society.
Yeah.
So they kind of are similar to me, but on different sides of the moral argument, so to speak.
Yeah. Although I would be actually kind of interested to watch back, particularly paying attention for what San cares about, because I'm not 100% sure how idealist she is. Like, obviously she's been raised by a god wolf of sorts. And so has this kind of understanding of how important the forest and nature is. But a lot of the time, it's a more direct, her trying to protect those she cares about and those she considers, like, part of her group, more than kind of these broader ideals that a lot of the other characters are fighting for. So I wonder if she has even a more narrow perspective. I don't know.
I don't remember her stating any real goals besides she wants to kill the humans to keep the land for the mountains and the forest, and she wants to take down Ibayoshi. Like, I think those were it.
Yeah.
And that makes it a bit less interesting if it's just kind of like, I want to keep our land and prevent humans from taking over, and I want to kill the person who's in charge of that, compared to Ibayoshi or Ashitaka, who have a bit more nuanced goals of, you know, trying to save humanity, but, like, at what cost, and then him trying to stop the scar on his arm, but then also trying to save both people and trying to prevent violence, you know. So hers is just kind of like holding down the fort, which is admittedly doesn't stack up as fascinating compared to the other two.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. So I'd say that, and that's not even, like, a huge criticism, it's just, like, how she is, but it is interesting because, I mean, her title is the name of the movie.
Yeah, right? Where so much kind of focus is given to her, where I do feel like there are other aspects of or so much focus is given to her in terms of, like, the promotional material, I should say.
Yeah, like, she is the face of the movie.
She's the face of the movie, but the movie doesn't focus on her more than it needs to, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And she is kind of one of the least interesting elements. I do wonder why that is.
I don't know, maybe it was to have that connection between, you know, like, Nazca in the Valley of the Wind, but it is, like, very much about Nazca.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, Princess Mononoke, like, maybe it's trying to have that connection of focusing on, like, the female lead of the story, even though Nazca is the actual, like, point of view character of the story.
Yeah, even though I guess that makes sense, and maybe it is because it's it's Ashitaka's focus, in terms of how he falls in love with San, and so ends up kind of more in that camp than in Eboshi's camp, even though Eboshi is kind of the more interesting human protagonist of the movie to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. It was interesting to think about, because I think they, like, I knew that I saw this clip of, like, him calling her beautiful, and I thought it was funny because, like, I remember seeing that clip before of, like, she's about to kill him, And, like, he's saying some stuff to her about, like, he's just saying stuff. And she's, like, ready to kill him with his own knife. And then when he says, "You're beautiful," she, like, jumps the fuck back as if he burned her. It was insane, but very interesting.
Yeah, so,
because it's like...
So I think that's more meant to be about her not having human contact.
Like, yeah, like, the idea of being complimented for something, for her human appearance, which is something that she is, like, rejected.
Yeah.
Like, she rejects being a human. She doesn't consider herself human. But being complimented for her human nature, or human appearance, like, human attributes, was, like, the most, I don't even know if it was insulting to her. She was just shocked. Like, she didn't know how to react.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I do think that's actually an interesting kind of, thread throughout the movie in relation to her. I don't think she's as ideologically interesting, but I do think her interactions with Ashitaka are kind of fascinating just from the perspective of looking at someone who has talked with wolves all their lives, learning how to deal with another human being.
Yeah, it was so interesting, because I also wonder how she's able to, like, speak the human language, but I guess he could speak to the wolves at some point. So, like, I'm not really sure. I'm not going to question that one.
Yeah, language is weird. Well, I mean, the boar also speaks to him at the very beginning. Like, these god animals, I guess, are... Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, because they're all gods.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's because they're gods. I think that's it. Because they're not actually normal animals.
Yeah, so I think
so
that's the case. Sense. How San talks to Yaku is interesting, though, because she can clearly talk to other animals then, right? Or... Yeah, because Ashitaka can't speak to Yaku. But he can't talk to Yaku.
Yeah. Sad. The bromance will never be because they can't fully communicate, which is sad. Yeah, but that was an interesting scene because I do like how they commit with San of, they didn't make a story about, you know, she was raised by wolves, but then accepts that she's human and goes to live with them, you know, like kind of like a Tarzan thing. They don't go Tarzan with it where she falls in love with the human and then lives with them and accepts that nature. Like, she doesn't consider herself human. She still hates humans, but she likes him. Yeah. She's like, I like you, but I hate humans. Like, I can't live in a human society. Oh, but I like you.
Yeah, I think the ending is almost like anti-Tarzan in that sense. If it portrays it as not the right thing for her to leave what she is and go and become human. I think it's more portraying, like her relationship with Ashitaka is this idea of she should probably explore her human aspects more. But I think the film sets it as its quote-unquote right that she doesn't necessarily fall all the way into that because she enjoys being a wolf, and she is a wolf, I guess.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of cool as well. I hadn't really thought about that.
It is a cool detail to have, because I wasn't sure how much of it was, like, how much was it an actual romance between the two, or just, like, a strong fascination. Like, I wasn't really sure, because they don't play it up, which I think is good.
Yeah.
We don't really need a romance in this movie. But it was an interesting thing to see it was just, like, interesting to see. And it was a cool ending that felt, like, semi-realistic, so to speak.
Right.
Like, it felt, like, it wouldn't feel realistic for her to go through this traumatizing event of losing her forest, losing everything, and then being like, yeah, I'm gonna go live with humans because I love this guy.
That would be dumb. Thinking about that.
Yeah.
Especially since, like, I guess, like, San's infatuation makes, like, some amount of sense to me, because it's like, oh shit, another chill human, of course you would be curious about that. I'm not really clear as to what Ashitaka's initial interest was, but yeah, I guess there we are.
I feel like it's just, like, he's fascinated by her, and, like, she's good-looking, which is not, but it is weird, because I don't know if we ever get the impression that he cared about her more than he did any other character, because he cared about Lady Ibayoshi and all the people in the village.
No, I think we do, though.
And then that town.
I kind of got the impression that he did care about her in a different sense. Like, in terms of, like, saving everyone, I don't think he cared about her more than anyone else. But I do think there was a romantic connection there that I don't... I don't know. It felt a little bit underdeveloped to me, but again, it wasn't focused on... It wasn't focused on a bunch, so I don't think it ended up being a huge problem. But it definitely is... Yeah. It is kind of one of the threads in the film that was just kind of, like, little explored.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of works because... if they did, it was kind of underdeveloped, but also, like, not the focus. So that would make it even weirder if she did just go and, like, leave everything to be with him. So it makes sense because they weren't trying to tell a romance about how she like met this human and he completely changed her perspective on humans, but more of she met a human who she cared about, and that's a huge deal because she hates humans. Like, she met one who changed her, who is the exception to her, and that's sometimes enough.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think, and that's why I think the romance makes a lot of sense from San's perspective, whereas from Ashitaka's perspective, I guess I just don't entirely get it. But again, not a huge focus. It's not something that was played up at the end, so I don't think it's a big deal. Because like you oftentimes see in movies like this, or in like movies in general, whatever romance is going through the film becoming the most important deal by the end of it, regardless of whether or not that's been built up. And I don't think that was the case here. I think it was portrayed as exactly what it was. This infatuation between two characters that could potentially develop into something more, but they continue to go and live their own lives, which I think is perfectly fair.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that worked out well. But yeah, it was a cool experience too. I like the one quote by our favorite monk dude who barely has a name, Jiko, where at some point he says, like, all of life is a curse and all of life is suffering, which sounds very like Hot Topic out of context, but in context, it was cool to show that like every tribe, like the humans, the animals in the forest, everyone is suffering with life. All of the tribes are suffering, and they're all just kind of trying to cope the best way they know how. So I appreciate that, but it's also tough when like the only thing that everyone can come together and is the one like universal thing they had in common was suffering. Yeah,
and of course the one person who recognizes that and decides to live entirely for himself ends up being the person who's causing the most suffering. So
yeah, like he uses it almost as like justification for himself. He's like, all of life is suffering, so what can you do?
Yep, just gotta look out for myself. Keep moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, just keep suffering. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah, feels bad.
Yeah, feels bad. But he is wise in a sense, that character, even if he is awful. And that's what I ultimately like makes this one of my favorite movies of all time, because there are so many really strong philosophical threads just going on along with each other that don't feel like they're strangling out the story, or like the author's trying to like make a character a mouthpiece.
Yeah, exactly. But also the best part of the movie, as I said, was at the end when San and Ashitaka split up. Ashitaka, after this whole journey, does not go back to his own village, but he stays in the Iron Town so he can hook up with all the chicks who were thirsty for him. That is the best part of the movie. The smartest main character in anime is just going where he can smash tons of chicks.
Yeah, smash tons of former prostitutes. So, not bad. Not bad, Ashitaka.
Not bad. Yeah. He knew what was up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, not to mention, though, if he's making that choice based on a purely, like, woman perspective, how old were the girls in his village? Were they, like, all 13 or something? Like, they looked young.
They looked young, but they also kept, like, because I was watching the sub for it, and they said his name in the actual subtitles, but they were essentially saying, like, Onichan. So I'm not sure if it was, like, he was actually their brother, or if he was just, like, an older brother figure for them.
Gotcha. But either way, that's weird, so he's got to get out of that village to smash, is the ultimate point.
He does. He does. He needs to save humanity to smash.
Damn, that's why he's such like a virtuous and wise character, because he's like learned throughout his life that he has to be the savior of humanity if he ever needs
exactly.
If he ever wants to get laid. That's just his curse. Yeah.
Exactly. The smartest movie. No one can question the ending and its logic.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not good enough for these movies. Like, they make like all these nice deep movies with good themes and stuff, and then here I am with just like, yeah, but he stayed to smash. We knew what's up.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can always meme off of movies like this. It's totally fine. There's the other thing, of like the best top 10 anime kiss scenes of the like jerky.
When he's like, she's like chewing his food for him because I guess he can't do it, and like giving it to him like mouth to mouth.
Yeah.
So and they framed it as like a kiss scene, but she's just like keeping him alive. Very romantic.
The inherent romance of pre-chewed meat.
It's so when you think about it, it's like not hot. That's just so like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you ever kiss someone and then realize that they have gum in their mouth?
Wait, this is actually, like, super off topic, but kind of funny, because there's this one show out there, it's on, like, the TLC channel, and it's, like, this reality show, I think, called, like, 90 Day Engagement, and it's essentially all about these, like, really weird Americans who are dating these, foreigners who are just trying to get a green card, and it's, like, how long can they stomach these, like, awful Americans to try and get U.S. citizenship? And there was one, like, of the female... like, this female U.S. citizen who was dating this one guy who I think was from Africa, and she went to his home country, to his hometown, and his mom was, like, cooking them both, like, this really traditional meal. And it was just, like, snails, which is not, like, the grossest thing to eat. Like, I think it's not, like, out of the ordinary to eat snails, especially because it's, like, high class in France. Mm-hmm. But she got this, like, snail dish, and instead of just eating it like a normal person, she tried eating it and could not handle it. So she gave it to him through, like, mouth to mouth in a kiss, like, right in front of his mom. So that's, like... So that's what I think of, like, whenever I see someone, like, feeding them via mouth to mouth. It's, like, this dumbass show from the TLC channel.
Yeah, no, the concept is nasty. But, I mean, like, in the context of the movie, it is sweet, but it's also nasty.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, what else is there to talk about? If we, like, obviously soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, the soundtrack and visuals are really fantastic. I think it's a cool scene because, a cool movie. Why do I keep, like, I call it a series, a scene, like, it's a movie. I think it's cool with the movie because a lot of the visuals are very consistent, and I think some of the cinematography with the tracking shots are really impressive. But overall, there aren't really, like, flashy scenes where you feel like, oh yeah, they put more effort into this scene over other scenes, which is, like, a good thing. I think it's, like, a very consistent, well-made movie. So, like, all of it looked really good to me, not just, like, a few parts here and there. But that's kind of what you expect with Ghibli.
Yeah. And so it looked really nice. I also just like a lot of the designs. Like, you have the deer god, which is just bizarre and awesome.
Yeah, he spooks me.
I like the, like, Irontown looks really cool. Like, I think there are just, like, a lot of these very kind of unique aesthetic, like, places and characters that were put in, but nothing that felt, just, like, overtly, like, really, like, weird or or, like, super weird or flashy.
Yeah, it all felt believable. Yeah, it was cool. I like the design of the, like, curse on the boar. It looked very parasitic and wormy, so it's, like, this natural, like, creepiness to it. So then that makes it, like, really creepy later on when you see, like, San is, like, caught in the boar's, like, curse thing. It just, like, makes your skin crawl looking at it and, like, thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which, in a way, is kind of like how we should feel when we see all the extreme violence. Like, we should be creeped out by the extreme violence we see with, Ashitaka's, like, huge kill with the super strength arrow shots.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure. But, yeah. You know what came off as creepy as shit to me, though? Was the guys in the boar skins.
Yeah, I didn't even believe, but, I think that was, like, I didn't even believe that was them at first. I was just like, yo, these guys are too creepy to be humans. Like, maybe it's just, like, maybe they're just, you know, some kind of, like, other parasite weird thing. But then when it's humans and you see them creeping along like that, you're like, yo, how are they able to do that? It's so creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. What is there anything else that we really need to, like, cover? That was really most of what was in my brain.
Mine too. It was a really great watch, and I really enjoyed it. I knew it would be good, but I didn't think it would be that good. So I think I'm giving it a 9 out of 10.
Yep, same boat. Like, I had
nice.
When I first watched it, my friend kind of forced me to. And I was telling you about this earlier, but to say it on the pod, like, I was, I kind of didn't want to watch it at the time, because I was like, this is a 2-hour movie, and, like, I'm not gonna love it this much. Like, I've seen a couple of, like, Ghibli films, and I still need to see a lot more now, and this one is a clear showcase as to why. But I had seen, like, a couple, and I was like, yeah, I like these, but none of these are my favorite. And then I watched this and was like, oh, this is, like, actually one of my favorite movies of all time. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's a cool one that you can show a lot of people, too, because I think it's a very accessible story.
Yeah.
And it's not too complicated, but just, like, interesting enough to give you something different. I think this is like actually my third Ghibli film, so I feel kind of like a slacker in the same boat. So I need to see more Ghibli films, but I do like know that there's just a certain level of quality that you're gonna get with them, and it was great to see. So I'm excited to see more. Maybe we'll both find one that we haven't seen yet, and we can watch it and both see what's up with that. Because I know we wanted to kind of do this as a series of just, watching movies and then reacting to them, like, right after watching them.
Yeah. No, I think we could just do this for possibly more Ghibli films, possibly other films. I think this was fun. I
had a good time.
So yeah, next time recommend me something and we can try and figure this out.
Yeah, that sounds good. But naturally, if we don't do a Ghibli next time, and depending on the movie, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. We'll see, I guess. This is what, this has to be my second favorite anime movie because it comes right after Millennium Actress. So,
that's high praise.
So unless you show me something really fantastic, it might be downhill from here. We'll see.
It might actually be. Yeah, we'll have to find out next time. Great. Well, thanks to everyone for listening into us. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our rambles and conversation, me not knowing if we're watching a movie series or a scene, just like tossing in words there. But if you guys like it and have any movies you want us to check it out. If you want us to check out movies, let us know. We will watch movies.
See ya.
Bye.